What happens when a carefully curated public image runs headfirst into the one voice that doesn't play by the rules? January 2026 didn't bring a quiet reset for Meghan Markle, it brought renewed scrutiny. 4 years, controversial whispers sat on the internet's fringe, dismissed as gossip, buried under PR polish and royal protocol. Many assumed those stories were done for good. But then Joe Rogan started asking questions. And once he did, the conversation changed entirely. Ask yourself this: why do certain stories stay buried until the wrong person brings them up? Joe Rogan isn't tabloids. He isn't palace media. And he doesn't soften his tone for celebrities, royalty, or billion-dollar institutions. When something doesn't add up, he pulls at the thread, no matter who's wearing the sweater. That's exactly why his renewed focus on Meghan's past reportedly triggered panic behind closed doors. This wasn't about making claims. It was about reopening doors Meghan allegedly worked hard to shut. Rogan's platform reaches an estimated 200 million listeners worldwide. When he raises questions, they don't stay in a comment section. They spread across podcasts, clips, group chats, and dinner tables. For image-driven public figures, that kind of exposure is dangerous because it can't be managed or controlled. Joe has criticized Meghan before, openly and bluntly. Years ago, he mocked what he saw as the transformation of Prince Harry's life into a celebrity brand. Later, he questioned her comments about feeling objectified during her acting days, offering little sympathy and plenty of sarcasm. Whether people agree or not, Joe's tone has always been consistent, unsentimental and unapologetic. Under the bright lights of modern media, there are moments when a single question can feel more dangerous than 1,000 accusations. Not because it proves anything, but because it invites people to think for themselves. That is exactly what happened when Joe Rogan, in his unmistakably casual yet disarming style, revisited long-circulating rumors involving elite social circles, private yachts, and uncomfortable overlaps tied to Prince Andrew. The reaction was instant. Headlines flared. Social media ignited. Critics rushed to condemn him. Supporters leaned in closer. And yet, Rogan didn't declare anything as fact. He didn't issue a verdict. He didn't point a finger and say, "This is what happened." He did something far more unsettling to powerful systems. He asked questions that no one else seemed willing to ask out loud. Why had these stories lingered for decades on the fringes of public conversation but never been seriously examined by mainstream media? Why did certain names trigger instant shutdowns rather than deeper inquiry? And why, in an age obsessed with transparency, did so many doors remain firmly closed? That question, why the silence, is where the discomfort truly begins. Into this uneasy space steps author Kirby Sommers, a controversial figure herself, but one who claims to have spent years studying elite networking systems and social pipelines connected to figures like Ghislaine Maxwell. Sommers alleges that while tracing these networks, she found overlapping environments that included Meghan Markle years before she ever met Prince Harry. According to her research, Meghan may have crossed paths with Prince Andrew in the early 2000s within the same rarefied social ecosystems, spaces that most people never even know exist. Sommers points to private gatherings, luxury travel circuits, and yacht-centered social scenes in Southeast Asia, places where wealth, influence, and anonymity intersect. She claims photographs from that era may exist, though she insists they are not the recycled internet images that have already been debunked and dismissed. Instead, she alleges these materials are quietly held by major outlets that have chosen never to publish them. To be clear, these are allegations, not proven facts. But what Joe Rogan keeps circling back to isn't the claim itself, it's the refusal to investigate it. That silence, he argues, is louder than any rumor. And then there's Marcus Anderson. Publicly, Marcus Anderson is known as the Soho House executive who famously introduced Meghan Markle to Prince Harry. That part of the story is widely accepted, even celebrated, a modern fairy tale where the right people met at the right time. But Rogan isn't interested in the fairy tale ending. He's focused on the chapters that came before. How long had Anderson known Meghan? How deeply had he been involved in guiding her through elite social environments? And perhaps most importantly, what gave him the confidence to broker an introduction to a British prince? Those aren't accusations. They're structural questions. Soho House itself complicates the picture. It's often described casually as a members-only club, but those who understand it know it's far more than that. It's a global networking engine, designed around privacy, exclusivity, and curated access. No photographs. No recordings. No public guest lists. The secrecy isn't incidental. It's the product. Inside those rooms, careers are shaped, alliances are formed, and futures quietly change course. So when Rogan begins asking what really happens in spaces like that, who gains access, who grants it, and why, it makes powerful people uncomfortable. Not because he's exposed anything concrete, but because he's peeling back the illusion that these worlds are harmless or random. Consider a documented detail that rarely gets contextualized. Meghan Markle received an invitation to Yacht Week 2016 in Croatia. Yacht Week is openly described by attendees and even lifestyle media as a high-energy party environment catering to wealthy elites and influencers. There is no confirmed evidence that she attended. Rogan has been careful to stress that point. But again, attendance isn't the issue. Access is. Why was that invitation available in the first place? Who extended it? And how does that fit into the broader narrative of a struggling actress who just happened to stumble into royalty? That distinction, between presence and access, is where Rogan plants his flag. He isn't declaring guilt. He's highlighting patterns. Networks. Pathways that don't neatly align with the simplified version of events presented to the public. And that's where things become deeply human. Because responding to these questions isn't easy. Meghan Markle, like anyone, has a past years of ambition, effort, networking, and survival in a ruthless industry. To address Rogan directly would mean reopening chapters she may have worked hard to leave behind. Silence, however, can look evasive. A response invites more scrutiny. Either path carries emotional cost. The spotlight doesn't just shine, it burns. Now imagine Prince Harry's position in all of this. Rogan has previously questioned whether their relationship was driven as much by ambition and circumstance as by romance. If discussions about elite networking and strategic introductions gain traction, Harry's image subtly shifts. He's no longer just the rebellious prince who followed his heart. He becomes a man who may have been maneuvered within a system he barely understood. Imagine discovering that your love story, one you believe to be spontaneous, genuine, and yours alone, might have been influenced by forces operating quietly behind the scenes. That realization wouldn't just challenge public perception. It would challenge identity. And Rogan never says this is what happened. He frames it as possibility, as something worth examining. But once millions of listeners begin asking the same questions, the damage doesn't come from proof, it comes from doubt. Doubt erodes certainty. And certainty is the foundation of every carefully constructed public image. This is why Joe Rogan is so difficult to counter. He doesn't accuse. He doesn't posture. He invites his audience to connect the dots themselves. And people trust conclusions they arrive at on their own far more than narratives handed down by institutions they already distrust. There's something strangely inspiring about that. Not the rumors themselves, but the act of questioning. The refusal to accept that some topics are off-limits simply because they involve powerful people. Rogan's appeal isn't that he claims to know the truth. It's that he believes the truth should be explored, even when it's uncomfortable. So where does this lead? Joe Rogan isn't backing off. His platform is massive. His independence is real. And his audience feels like participants, not spectators. Traditional tools, PR statements, legal pressure, controlled interviews, don't work here. In fact, attempts to silence him would likely reinforce the very skepticism he's voicing. At this point, the issue isn't whether any particular rumor is true. The real question is far more unsettling. Can any carefully managed public image survive in a world where the largest podcast on the planet keeps asking questions no one else will? Inspiration doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it arrives as a challenge, to think more deeply, to question narratives, to accept that truth is often messier than stories were sold. Joe Rogan didn't make a claim. He started a conversation. And once a conversation reaches hundreds of millions of people, there is no rewind button. Only reflection. Only inquiry. And perhaps in the end, a more honest relationship with the truth, even when it's incomplete.